Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1141. Tian Fa moves. Evil Monarch Order. All the 3,000 forces of the Eagle tribe are to take to the skies with the Bear tribe. Hurry over to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains at full speed. Confirm the situation within the fastest possible time. If it is truly the worst situation, please risk everything and anything and begin the first wave of attacks immediately. Jun Moxie gave the order coldly. Speed was the most important in warfare. The Eagle tribe was the fastest, and the Bear tribe was the strongest species in sustaining a battle. The Eagle tribe will have to fly with all their might in this battle, so when they reach the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the Xian beasts with weaker cultivation will no longer have much effect in battle. The only outcome was a tragic sacrifice. But this sort of sacrifice was necessary, because it was them who brought warriors of the Bear tribe over at the fastest possible time. Yes, sir. Eagle King's face remained expressionless, his voice firm and unwavering. The 8 of us also want head over with this first wave of members. Saint Venerable Lu stepped forward, and along with the rest, they stood along with the Eagle and Bear tribe members. The previous generation of beast kings that had been shamelessly betrayed by the 3 holy lands had no hesitation, stepping out resolutely. Even though they were well aware that the ultimate outcome of this first wave of attacks meant death for them, they still had no second thoughts. Fine. Bring the wine. Jun Moxie hollered loudly. The entire skies quaked. The best wine. For our heroes. Send them off to battle. All the servants of the evil monarch manor hurriedly brought out countless of strong wine, filling it all up. 6,000 warriors raised their cups. Jun Moxie lifted up a cup of wine and declared, "This cup of wine is for all the heroes who protect the lives of the continent. There will be countless brothers who will not return from this battle. Here. I, Jun Moxie, send my brothers farewell." Jun Moxie stated facts, even though it was very cruel. The incident this time had really happened too suddenly. There was absolutely no time to come up with a systematic military arrangements. Aside from their mission of being the first wave of attacks to stop the invasion, the 6,000 men from the Eagle and Bear tribe heading over first will only be sending themselves to their deaths as cannon fodder first. There was no chance of returning back alive. Even the 8 beast kings who were already Saint Venerables were no exception. But the subsequent troops will only have time to come up with adequate arrangements because of them sacrificing their lives to vie for some time. This was battle. And battles were always been cruel and merciless. There had never been a single battle where no one died. Or only the enemy died. This time, you are all extremely crucial. I'm going to be blunt. We are using your lives to gain some time for the continent. I only have one request of you guys. No matter how you fight, even if you die, make sure you drag a few strange races along with you. That is all. Jun Moxie's voice was cold and unfeeling, reverberating in the air. The entire place was silent. All the 6,000 elites of the Eagle and Bear tribes had unwavering determination in their eyes. Hesitation, cowardice. Not a single negative emotion appeared on them. Not the slightest bit of it. Down this cup of wine. No matter life or death. No matter which life. You are all heroes. My brothers. Jun Moxie hollered. My brothers. Let us use our boiling blood to paint this continent in the most beautiful colors. Let us create history with this victory. Cheers. Cheers! 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 Ha! 6,000 cups were smashed into smithereens on the ground simultaneously. Farewell, my brothers and sisters. Everyone, head out. Mei Shuayan tossed a red-colored flag into the hands of the Eagle King. Brothers, let us take our leave first and have a good battle. Eagle King howled as he grabbed the flag. He flipped in the air and transformed into a giant eagle. His feathers were as sharp as arrows. The blood-red flag flew in the wind, with Tian Fa's death squad written on it. A blazing crimson like blood, fluttering in the wind. Big Bear cackled loudly as he rose in the air. Brothers, I'll take my leave first. This daddy has been waiting for hundreds of years for this day. Tian Fa is mighty. Big Bear roared as he landed on the back of Eagle King. An ardent look filled Eagle King's eyes as he spread his iron wings and let out a sharp cry. Like a piercing black arrow that cut through the skies, he shot into the clouds, carrying Big Bear. The eagle soared in the skies, chasing the wind and clouds, faster than lightning. With no hesitation and reluctance, departing from the skies of this hometown. With a hong, all the other Xian eagles also rose into the sky, flying after the Eagle King, carrying their comrade southwest. 6,000 forces headed out, like a sharp arrow that was trying to shred the skies. The arrow had been fired. They were going to use their lives to write the rest of history. The entire troop became a small, black dot in the sky, but not a single member turned back to look at Tian Fa Forest. At this hometown that they had grown up for, there was only unflinching determination. Eagle King, Bear King, and 6,000 warriors. Mei Shuayan's eyes turned red as her tears fell. She had just sent 6,000 of her own brothers and sisters onto a journey of death. How could her heart not ache? And how could she not cry? Jun Moxie's face remained dark and solemn. With no expression, he sent his own personal commanders in the second group. Solitary Eagle, Feng Wanyun. The both of you shall lead 300 members from the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer, along with 300 members of the Crane tribe, and head off immediately. Be the second echelons. Support Eagle King and Bear King. Stop the enemies with all your might. Yes, sir. Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun both stepped forward and cupped their hands to receive the order. Crane King Long Crane waved his hand, and 300 Xian Crane's experts with cultivation of a saint stepped out into formation. This was a combination of humans and Xian Cranes. This group took off to the skies even faster. Under the command of Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun, the 300 Xian Cranes converged in the skies like a rolling cloud. It was only 1 hour after the Eagle King had departed. But Jun Moxie and the rest knew that when Solitary Eagle and the rest reached the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, they'd be late by at least 10 hours, or even more. The difference in speed and stamina between cranes and eagles was something that could not be compared. Even cultivation wouldn't be able to patch up this disparity. And this gap of 10 hours will absolutely be a cruel test to the Eagle King and Bear King. When facing the strange race's invasion, will 6,000 experts be able to fend them off for 10 hours? This was something no one dared to say they were confident of. Even if they managed to hang in there until Solitary Eagle and the rest arrived, they may not be able to avoid death. Because what they were facing was an enemy that was 100 times stronger than themselves. Of course, if they could last till Solitary Eagle and the rest arrived, the situation may be alleviated a little. After all, they were experts amongst experts. Good steel must be used on the knife blade. Tiger King. Crane King. Your tribe shall form the third troop. Depart immediately to back up. Jun Moxie ordered firmly. Tiger King Earthcracker. Crane King Long Crane stepped out simultaneously. With a flurry of wind, the 6,000 men under them flew after the rest. Bailey Luo Yun. Leng Ao. Jun Moxie continued to give commands. The both of you, along with Tian Can and DK and the 36 assassins, will form the fourth troop with 50 brothers of the Peng tribe. Always remember, do not forget your role as assassins. Your mission this time is not to support but to assassinate. Kill all those monstrous strange races with your utmost assassination abilities. Understood? Yes. Bailey Luo Yun and Leng Ao stepped forward determinedly. Move out. Another troop departed, and the space had already become a lot more spacious. Lion King, Monkey King, Peng King, Condor King, Wolf King. The 25,000 members of your tribes will form the fifth troop. All of you head over. Bring along enough medicine, provision and all the supplies. Jun Moxie commanded. These 5 tribes had the greatest number, but were the weakest in terms of strength. But they were not to be underestimated. Even if they were bringing the logistics, they will also be able to kill the enemy at the most crucial timing. The remaining members, including Snake Queen and Panther King, shall all be under Jun Wuyi's commands. Gradually search from the region of the southwest carefully. If there are any strange races that have gotten in, annihilate them. There is no time limit for this mission. Until you reach the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. I don't want a single one of them alive. Jun Moxie had never forgotten something as gross as Jiang Jun Xie. If the strange races managed to get in and left some descendants, there would only be endless trouble. And this threat was probably the biggest danger of the invasion from the strange races. And something like this. No one had the abilities to lead and analyze like the Blood General Jun Wuyi. Only the Blood General was capable of carrying this sort of complicated mission without making a single mess. Yes, sir. Jun Wuyi and Snake Queen stepped forward to receive the order. The rest, stay in Tian Fa to await my orders. Without my order, no one shall step out of Tian Fa forest from this moment on. Otherwise, they'll be punished severely. Even if someone else comes, if they're unable to provide the secret code, you must not open the formation. Jun Moxie reiterated this point sternly. The matter with the Pillar of Heaven's mountains had happened so quickly, and the crisis with the Zhan family had yet to be resolved. If Zhan Luanhui planned to take this opportunity to attack the evil monarch manor, it'd really be in big trouble. All the members of Tian Fa who were capable of putting on a fight had already been deployed. There wasn't much fighting power left in the manor. But as long as the 9 heavens 9 earth demon repelling formation that Jun Moxie set up exists, even if Zhan Luanhui came here personally, he would not be able to come in. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1142. Power of Wind and Clouds. Stop the skies from toppling. Unless Zhan Luanhui had the same divine cultivation like Miao Qingcheng and was able to bring along a heavenly tribulation that was capable of destroying the world, he couldn't forcefully destroy this formation. But Jun Moxie didn't believe that Zhan Luanhui had this sort of cultivation. And didn't believe that he had the guts. Because even if he borrowed the might of the heavenly tribulation to destroy the formation, he will not be able to avoid his death from the heavenly tribulation. Would a selfish bastard who ruins a descendant every few hundred years for his own life make this sort of sacrifice? With this, All arrangements were complete. Jun Moxie looked at the empty space one last time before calmly saying, "Shui Yan, both of us shall set off now. To Mount Heaven Saint." Mount Heaven Saint? Not the pillar of heaven's mountains? Mei Shui Yan was surprised. "Shui Yan, the matter this time is beyond our expectations. Now that the pillar of heaven's mountains is very likely to be destroyed, the troops of the strange races will definitely invade the Xian continent easily. We have to go and see how much battle strength the three holy lands have left after the pillar of heaven's mountains has collapsed. What I am most worried about right now is that three holy lands have already been wiped out or sustained great losses to their forces. Then it'll really be a huge problem. It is very difficult to win this battle with our strength alone." Mei Shui Yan was hit by this realization. So this was why Jun Moxie had deployed all the strongest forces of the troops in Tian. Jun Moxie has already considered at great lengths. But Jun Moxie let out a slow sigh. He had originally planned to bring his own men across the Pillar of Heaven's mountains after the war for seizing the heavens, entering the enemy's territories to kill them. Then, no matter how they destroy, it will all be at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and it would have no impact on the Xian continent. If it didn't work, they could just retreat and go again when the time was right. They could attack and defend. But he could barely get round to it when this major change occurred, ruining all of young Master Jun's battle strategies and plans. Especially the collapse of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. No one had dreamt of it happening. Now, they could only face it on. Besides, there must be a reason for the sudden collapse of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. A chilling glint flashed in Jun Moxie's eyes. That is a restriction that the Nine Nether First Young Master set up personally. How could it collapse so easily? There must be a reason behind it. And I believe the people from the three holy lands will know the reason. If there was one person who made Jun Moxie genuinely feel cautious of, it would be the Nine Nether First Young Master alone. Aside from him, young Master Jun was confident of catching up and surpassing even the Nine Nether 14th Young Master or Miao Qing Cheng and Zhan Luanhui in a short period of time, even though he was still lacking currently. The Nine Nether First Young Master was an existence that was capable of facing the great god Hongjun. Young Master Jun is confident and conceited, but he dared not overestimate his own capabilities in facing this boss. If someone who was capable of destroying the restraints the Nine Nether First Young Master had set personally, that person was definitely a tough enemy. With some more arrangements and leaving some instructions, Jun Moxie and Mei Shui Yan instantly hurried over to where the disaster started Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Jun Moxie did not use any aerial Xian beasts to help them hurry in their journey. He kept Mei Shui Yan into the Hongjun Pagoda and activated the yin-yang escape before traversing through the air at maximum speed, covering 1,000 li in an instant. Jun Moxie hurried along on his own, covering almost 3,000 li in a couple of hours. As he got closer to the venue, the temperature in the surrounding got higher and higher. This was something that was caused by the unexpected natural disaster. Jun Moxie squinted his eyes at the distance. The blurry black smoke in the horizon became clearer in sight. In a single afternoon, he covered 8,000 li. This was a speed that no one would be able to surpass. An entire day passed. He was getting nearer and nearer to the location. Jun Moxie could clearly see the endless ashes and smoke that covered the skies. Thick smoke was spewing out of almost 30 mountains in the area. 30 volcanoes erupting at the same time. And every single one of them was massive. Even the brazen Jun Moxie couldn't help but take in a cold breath of air, seeing such a sight. He had already did his best to overestimate the severity of this disaster, but he never imagined it to be this dire. Jun Moxie was about 2,000 li away from his destination, but the heat waves that hit him were enough to make his hair fry. The volcanoes were still spewing hot, blazing lava. There were occasionally giant boulders that were sent in the air before raining down. There was only an acrid smell that filled the entire world. The fumes of a volcanic eruption. These were toxic things. The people of the Xian continent may not know of it, but young Master Jun knew. Thankfully, there were not many people in this region. But the extent of the damages was not small. And it was still expanding. These toxic gases were surging towards the inland areas. If it really made it through, then it'd really be a calamity for all living things. Just at this moment, the southwestern wind blew. The wind fanned the flames and sent the gases away. That was fast. The feck. I was wondering why they made this young master attain the power of wind and clouds before I came. So this was what it's for. Jun Moxie cursed. Power of wind. Reverse. Power of clouds. Roll. With a wave of his hands, he pointed in southwest. Gusts of northern wind suddenly formed, gaining strength and intensity, blowing straight towards the toxic gases that were surging over. With the current season, the strength of the southwestern winds was considerable. But this northeastern wind that defied nature was even stronger. The colorful clouds formed from the toxic gases came surging from the southwest. But the snowy white clouds that gathered in the northeastern direction crashed against it fearlessly. It was as if two divine, ancient gods were clashing in the skies. There should be no impact from the clashing of these seemingly formless clouds and ashes. But there was still a thunderous boom. Then, the two clouds swirled together, refusing to back off. With a boom, they shot into the skies. A giant, indescribable mushroom cloud formed in the skies with the explosion, rising in the air. And the most amazing thing was that the mushroom was half black, half white. The white portion exceedingly white, and the black portion exceedingly black. It was a spectacular sight. Jun Moxie raised his brows and sighed in pity. I don't think there can be such a spectacular mushroom cloud even if 1,000,000 atomic bombs exploded at the same time. God dang it. Why don't I have a camera now? If I could take a photo of it. Boom. The northern winds were cold, and the southern winds were hot. These two different winds clashed together, triggering sparks and lightning. Then, hail the size of fists began to rain from the skies. They landed noisily on the ground. Thick mist began to rise from the ground as they evaporated. The moment the power of wind was formed, it will never cease. With the increasing momentum of the northeastern winds, the southwestern winds finally began to lose strength and were forced back. The toxic gases were sent in the opposite direction. Jun Moxie grinned. Ha! I was just troubling over how to deal with you bunch of perverts. See how this daddy poisons all you strange races. Aren't you all hermaphrodites? Have a taste of these toxic fumes and show this daddy how you grow some extra limbs. With a wave of his hands, the winds got even stronger. When the winds reached a certain level, it was a considerable disaster for humans. If not because this was a remote place and Jun Moxie was able to control the winds at his will, he would not fan it to such a great intensity so recklessly. The moment the hurricane was set out, the southwest winds were utterly defeated, carrying all the toxic fumes back in the direction they came from. To be more accurate, it was sent flying over to where the strange races were located at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1143. Cause and Effect. Zhan Hui. All the swirling thick smoke pouring out of the volcanoes picked up speed along with the bellowing winds. Just that it was heading in the opposite direction. With the might of nature, the winds and clouds parted the endless curtain of smoke. Jun Moxie could finally look at the situation of those volcanoes. Although toxic threat was gone, hot lava continued to spew from those volcanoes, ricocheting right into the skies before falling down noisily, charring everywhere where it landed. Clearly, the pressure that needed to be released by these volcanoes was enormous. Under such boiling temperatures, all the surrounding water sources were depleting at a visible rate. The ground in many places had begun to crack. And this situation was still worsening. And everyone could only watch this natural disaster unfold. As if in a single breath, the entire world had transformed. This terrifying sight was happening for Real. The horror and dread of those watching it was incomparable. Even the three Holy Lands wouldn't be able to avoid this disaster. The area affected by the volcano eruptions had included the region of Mount Heaven Saint. And the three Holy Lands was located right at the core of this cluster of volcanoes. A calamity like this would have already flattened the entire Mount Heaven Saint. Then how many survivors could there be? I might have deployed the troops too early. I had not expected the extent of the destruction by these volcanoes to be this horrifying. The three Holy Lands at Mount Heaven Saint are definitely affected, but it couldn't be that easy on the strange races as well. It doesn't make sense if the volcano eruption only affects the Xian continent. The damages on the other side are definitely significant. And with the extent of the damages from the volcano eruptions, we will definitely not be able to go over. But they may not necessarily be able to come over either. Jun Moxie let out a sigh of relief. The casualties from this time might be greatly reduced. And the early arrival of him and Mei Shuayan will be able to prevent unnecessary deaths. With the current balance of power, he had never been in the disadvantageous position. Even if they fell into a treacherous situation of having to fight on their own, it could also prevent any backstabbing from the three Holy Lands. Most of the time, a comrade that cannot be trusted is more dangerous than an enemy. If they really lost the forces of the three Holy Lands, despite being handicapped significantly, they also have less to worry about. Jun Moxie, who was still counting his lucky stars, suddenly noticed movement in the clouds before him. With a whoosh, a black dot shot out from the plumes of smoke and through the strong winds. Jun Moxie could already tell that that black dot was a person. A person. In this world, in terms of cultivation, the 9 Nether First Young Master's disciple, Miao Qingcheng, was the highest. But he remained in seclusion due to the might of the heavenly tribulation. Aside from Miao Qingcheng, who else could be this powerful? Perhaps the 9 Nether 14th Young Master, but this person was obviously not him. And this person's strength was not necessarily weaker than the 9 Nether 14th Young Masters. In fact, he was even stronger. Since these two candidates were eliminated, there could only one person was left. The only possibility, Zhan Hui. Subsequently, 10 other figures came flying after that figure. These people were chasing with all their might. Even though there was a huge distance between them and it was impossible to make clear of their faces. The chilling air oozing from them could be felt clearly. It was as if those at the back caught the person in front and just spat at him or bit him once. They would die with no regrets. This was a great vengeance. The figures drew closer, and in the blink of an eye, the first person's face could be discerned. Jun Moxie squinted his eyes and focused his vision. Zhan Hui. As expected. It is him. And Jun Moxie recognized the person giving chase. It was that senior from Heaven's Saint Palace. The person leading the group was that boss from Heaven's Saint Palace. That old demon who had lived for 3,000 years, Guhan. And Guhan was the name he had for the past 3,000 years. 3,000 years before. He was called Wu Shan Yun. Right now, Guhan had a chilly look on his face. Clearly, he was extremely infuriated. His clothes were torn and tattered. Unlike when young Master Jun had first met him. He was obviously using some sort of suicidal method to increase his own speed to catch up with Zhan Hui, who was fleeing away. Guhan did not even consider about his own life anymore. This Zhan Hui definitely had something to do with the collapse of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Otherwise, someone like Guhan wouldn't be this furious. Zhan Hui continued to bound ahead at high speed, not turning behind even once. Suddenly, Guhan yelled. Zhan Kuang! Did you really think this seat cannot recognize you just because you have been fleeing? As the senior of the Xian continent. How could you be this insane to destroy the Pillar of Heaven's mountains? Dooming the Xian continent. You must die. This holler was like a thunderous clap, shaking the entire space tremendously. It continued to echo and reverberate, even causing a ripple in the air that vanished shortly after. Zhan Hui remained deaf to everything, gaining speed as he continued to flee. Zhan Kuang! You can't run. Even if you can, where can the Zhan family hide? You've committed such a gargantuan crime. You are the enemy of the Xian continent. Guhan roared angrily. Stop right now. Atone for your crimes with your death before your ancestors. Otherwise, because of your actions, the entire Zhan family will be implicated. Yet Zhan Hui began to fly even faster. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. This Guhan is too good at talking, telling someone to stop obediently and surrender, go back with you and atone for his mistakes with his death. It'll really be odd if the person doesn't run even faster after hearing you say this. They always say that one becomes wiser with age. But how could this old demon who had lived for at least 3,000 years say something this childish? In a flash, Zhan Hui had already appeared within a 500 zhang radius of Jun Moxie. And the distance between him and Guhan and the rest was also about the same. Jun Moxie made up his mind and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. He flipped in the air and the blood of yellow flame appeared in his hand. Zhan Hui was feeling depressed as he ran like mad. He had sacrificed hundreds of experts from the Zhan family for his return this time, allowing him to recover half his strength. He had made this trip for a huge secret in the Heaven Saint Palace. The secret that allowed the misty illusory manor to function. His objective was simple. It was to bring some of that secret back and use it as a leverage for the Zhan family to completely crush the Miao family in the misty illusory manor, stepping into the leading position of the misty illusory manor. His objective was very simple. He had even made his plans to swing by the Tian forest after he successfully obtained it from Heaven Saint Palace. Then annihilate that brazen lad. He had unintentionally made himself an enemy of the three holy lands in obtaining that secret. And that lad was also a thorn in the eyes of the three holy lands. He could resolve the grudge with the three holy lands by getting rid of that lad. As to that evil monarch? What young saint venerable expert? Before me, Zhan Hui. You are mere dog's fart. But he had never expected to accidentally take too much of that miraculous stuff. causing the seal set by the 9 nether first young master to lose its balance and collapse suddenly. Zhan Luanhui knew that he was in trouble and instantly fled. As long as he wasn't caught, there would be room for salvation. But he had never imagined that with such a huge incident, Gu Han and the rest were out for his blood. How could they let him leave? After an intense battle, Zhan Luanhui finally managed to escape. But the Heaven Saint Palace continued to give pursuit, and would rather ruin themselves in the process than let it go like this. Zhan Luanhui was still an experienced expert and was truly powerful. His knowledge, control, and use of his strength was something that Gu Han and the rest could not compare to. Even Gu Han could not close the distance between them despite using suicidal methods of increasing speed. The distance between them grew bigger and bigger. As long as I escaped safely, then all is good. I'm Zhan Kuang just because you said I'm Zhan Kuang. As long as this daddy refuses to admit it, what can you lot do about me? Zhan Luanhui knew that the matter this time was no small matter and already made up his mind to act shamelessly. Otherwise, this was a responsibility that even his master, Miao Qingcheng, could not bear. Then again, this incident had occurred in the Xian continent, and had nothing to do with misty illusory manner. The amount he had managed to obtain this time was considerable enough to last misty illusory manner 10,000 years. So what if the Xian continent fell into disaster? The mountain of mortals was right in front. After he passed this mountain, he would be able to enter the misty illusory manor any time he wished. When that time comes, they cannot do anything about me. In the brief moment Zhan Luanhui rejoiced in relief, he suddenly felt a chilling, murderous intent in the air about 100 zhang before him. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1144. Blood of Yellow Flame. Dance through the skies. This 100 zhang distance was chicken feet to Zhan Luanhui, who was traveling at maximum speed. He had already entered an 80 zhang radius during the time he developed a thought. Just at this moment, the entire world darkened. A blinding, giant sword light came chopping down from above Zhan Luanhui. At the same time, 18 spatial locks were tossed out in the entire region consecutively at high speed. The sword light was like a bolt of lightning, blinding the entire world. Even the scorching sun in the sky dulled in comparison to this blinding sword light. This sword light that appeared abruptly was so blindingly bright. It was like a lightning bolt in the night sky that connected the heavens and the earth. Zhan Luanhui, who had been fleeing the entire time, was caught completely off guard by this. His entire field of vision was filled with this shocking sword light. This sword had arrived too abruptly, too out of the blue. No one had expected it or was prepared for it. Just a moment ago, he was filled with joy for his almost successful escape. The next moment, there was a forceful sword right before him. A strike this powerful will definitely decide his life or death. A moment of life and death. Zhan Luanhui was shocked by the sight. But with his 10,000 years of experience, he quickly adapted. He let out a cry, maintaining his speed. But he suddenly altered the direction he was moving in, going upwards by at least 10 zhang altitude. The 18 spatial locks that Jun Moxie had set up earlier in hopes of hindering him did not have the slightest effect on Zhan Luanhui. He simply broke through all of it. In the midst of the attack, he changed direction while maintaining his speed, as if he were completely unaffected. But thankfully, Zhan Luanhui was not a god, so he wasn't really completely unaffected. In that moment he changed his direction. So did that flash of sword light. The end of it followed in suit, with an increase in its force. Zhan Hui's face darkened and he finally came to a halt. He was confident of shaking this sword light off with his speed. But if he insisted on running away right now, he would suffer the sudden attack by the sword light. No matter how fast a person was, they could not be faster than the sword chi released by an expert of similar cultivation. Right now, although the person had yet to reveal himself, Zhan Hui was clear that he had met a tough enemy. The person's control of his sword had already reached a terrifying level. Enough to be considered a grandmaster. Zhan Hui clearly thought extremely highly of Jun Moxie. When facing an opponent like this, the more cowardly one felt, the more flaws it would create in his state of mind. So Zhan Hui went from full speed to a complete stop mid-air and received that chilling sword light with both his palms, head on. That dazzling sword light shot forward like a rainbow, at high speed and full force. With a hong, both his palms clashed with the blinding sword light. Yet, things took another turn. The long sword let out a cry, suddenly turning in the air at high speed like a drill, piercing through Zhan Hui's defenses, layer by layer. Within seconds, it had already reached his throat. Zhan Hui only felt his throat turn cold. He couldn't help but break out in goosebumps from this drilling sword chi. He let out a cry and quickly moved backwards before flying 50 zhang up. He barely managed to escape death from that sword. After confirming his own safely, he realized he had broken out in a cold sweat. Thank goodness I did not underestimate the enemy earlier and kept a small portion of strength so that I could retreat in time. Otherwise, this body would have probably turned into a corpse from that just now. No, it may not even be a corpse. More like minced meat. For thousands of years, this was truly the first time Zhan Hui had experienced something this dangerous. It was truly a moment of life and death. That sword cut across the skies again before charging back at him unrelentingly. But Zhan Hui had already gathered all his xian qi in his body to strike. Through that brief exchange earlier, he could tell that the opponent was slightly inferior to himself. If he faced it head-on, there was still a chance of victory. It's a pity that it was not only that fiend-like divine sword that could affect the current situation. Because just at this moment, there was a whooshing of wind as a sinister, narrow black blade appeared before him, with endless resentment oozing out of it. An attack like this, an eerie feeling like this, how familiar was this to Zhan Hui? Only those who came out of that place had this sort of attacks. The 9 nether 14th young master? Zhan Hui was really taken aback this time. That divinely sword had caught him off guard and almost killed him. But through that brief exchange, Zhan Hui was sure that he has confidence in shaking the owner of the sword off. But the sudden intervention of the 9 nether 14th young master left him completely without confidence. He waved his hand in a fluster. A shiny long sword appeared in his hand. Even when faced with the attack of all the experts of Heaven Saint Palace, Zhan Hui did not bring out his weapon to face the enemy. But right now, the moment the 9 nether frost blade appeared, Zhan Hui whipped out his sword. The attacks of the 9 nether 14th young master weren't that easy to deal with. Zhan Hui had exchanged blows with one of the many 9 nether young masters once. Even with his cultivation, he struggled to survive. So he was clear of how troublesome these lunatics were. Ha! Under the joint attack of the two swords, Zhan Hui was sent back over 10 zhang. Jun Moxie was shocked by Zhan Hui's sudden cry of 9 nether 14th young master. N? The hell? It's this young master who attacked you. What does it have to do with that lunatic? But to young Master Jun, this sort of pleasant misunderstanding, the more the better. Misunderstanding? The more severe it is, the better. If I don't manage to kill him today, let him go and fight it out with the 9 nether 14th young master. Since that scoundrel is so free. And since he is so free, why doesn't he do something for the safety of the world? Since when was this young master this righteous? So Jun Moxie got more gleeful, continuing to attack while remaining concealed. The 9 nether frost blade was so versatile sometimes. It was 10 9 nether frost blade that were sent attacking at the same time, leaving Jun Xie helpless and howling. And there was the blood of yellow flame that could completely attack with its own conscience. Jun Xie was instantly left keeping up his defenses with no strength to fight back. To fight back, you need the opponent and the target. Right now, there weren't any. And these two attacking styles were too bizarre that even Jun Xie with all his vast knowledge and experiences felt completely confused. What sort of attacking style is this? These two are clearly wielded by using sword control techniques. But how could it be this nimble? How could the sword move this naturally? The divine sword moves with such ease it were as if it was alive. And the 9 nether frost blade was even more odd. As if it was being wielded by someone. But there clearly isn't anyone else here. With the current situation, Jun Xie's judgment was very accurate. All the signs pointed to an expert using the sword control technique from a distance, and his analysis of the situation was even more correct. The 9 nether frost blade was indeed being wielded by someone manually. It was just that Jun Xie couldn't see its wielder, or at least, detect him. As for the blood of yellow flame, Jun Moxie had allowed the blood of yellow flame to determine its own attacks. Since it devoured the blood of several saint venerables, Jun Moxie had boldly refined the blood of yellow flame a few more times. Now an invincible sword, the blood of yellow flame began to behave flamboyantly, flying and playing about in the Hongjun pagoda on its own. And Jun Moxie had used the blood essence refining method recorded in the Hongjun pagoda for the refinement this time, infusing all his awareness and sword skills in his memories into it. Does the man understand the sword, or does the sword understand the sword? This question found its answer here with Jun Moxie. This resulted in the blood of yellow flame surpassing its master, Jun Moxie, in terms of its cultivation. And this disparity was still growing. After all, young Master Jun had too many matters to see to. Seeing the fruit of all his painstaking labor showing off and flying about before him, occasionally displaying some brilliant swordplay that even he could not think of, young Master Jun felt like hitting his head against the wall. Did I spin a cocoon around myself? The feck, being looked down upon by a sword, how depressing. Right now, the blood of yellow flame had the awareness of a 15-year-old youth. But its understanding and knowledge of the sword was incomparable to those old fogies who had been immersed in this path for thousands of years. Even if the debauchee by one were here, he would lament under this sword. There is always someone outshining you at every turn. Since Chiu Bai exists, how could blood of the yellow flame be born? Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1145. Are you even worthy? The strength of the blood of yellow flame was truly astounding, but it was extremely dependent on young Master Jun. It was like a child that had obtained incredulous strength and enjoyed showing it off before his closest kins. When young Master Jun was free, it would fly out on its own and circle young Master Jun. Circling was fine, but it just had to zip through between young Master Jun's legs, back and forth, having a whale of a time. The blood of yellow flame was extremely elated, satisfied, and happy. But a certain someone was more depressed, and even worried. That place, is it a place for a divine weapon to be flying through? He could not even afford a small cut there. Young Master Jun had to forcefully use the sword chant to make this fellow go back in. Without this sword chant, young Master Jun would probably be scared into a state of impotence by this sword. A chilling breeze that blew under his crotch from time to time. Who could be unafraid of it? Which man would be able to endure such a feeling? There was no exception to this. So this time, Jun Moxie completely let the sword go on its own. He only infused a single thought into it. This fellow is a huge baddie. Do a good job and settle him. You will be rewarded heavily. You will be rewarded heavily. This was a huge temptation to blood of yellow flame. And this fellow in front looks rather powerful. If I manage to devour all of his cultivation, then how much stronger will I grow? So this sword began attacking at Jun Xie enthusiastically. Chopping, slicing, thrusting, stabbing away. There was some sort of pattern or routine to the sword move of a person, no matter how exquisite it was, but the sword techniques. This 10,000-year-old expert Jun Xie had yet to figure it out. Jun Xie placed all his focus on the person wielding the sword, on that powerful opponent. He had never imagined that all these attacks were of the sword's own will and accord. Why did the 9 14th young master become this powerful now? Forget the 9 frost blade. But this sword control is too divine, too fiendish. Jun Xie used his sword rapidly to fend off the attacks. The more he fought, the more he felt that the world really changed at an alarming rate. To think that there is someone who can control 2 swords at the same time and use different strokes. And every single stroke was complicated and something he had never seen before. If this person was not battling against him and he was not in a pathetic state, Jun Xie had the urge to exclaim in excitement. This level of sword technique was truly divine. It had reached a level of perfection. The use of the 9 frost blade was exquisite. But there were still small flaws that could be captured. But those strokes used by that divine sword left Jun Xie completely dazzled and stunned. To think that someone was able to deliver 1,000 blows in the snap of a finger. And every single blow was ruthless, quick, and vicious. And at a different place. One moment it was at the head, and the next, it was the foot. Striking at the chest from the front, and the next one was from the back. One moment, its attack was mighty like an explosion of thunder. The next moment, it was gentle like the leaves swaying in the breeze. The most terrifying thing was that all the attacks were equally balanced. What sort of detailed and precise control it required? What sort of monster is using this sword? Jun Xie was about to cry for his mother. This attacking style and level of control was too freakish. This went beyond logic. Not to mention the level of dexterity, xianqi, and strength of the wrists and arms it required to deliver these sword strokes. Just on how was it constantly attacking and changing directions, it was enough to make even an expert like Jun Xie suffer the devil's bite numerous times. But these series of attack continued to rain down seamlessly, relentlessly. As if the person wielding the sword knew no exhaustion and did not use any strength, or perhaps, was just taking his body as a joke. Could it be that the 9 14th young master had already reached such a godly state? In such a short period of time, Jun Xie had been stabbed more than 100 times. But his body was strengthened to be unharmed even by heavenly tribulation, thousands of times stronger than iron. Even the blood of yellow flame could not pierce through it if Jun Xie put on his full defenses. Otherwise, This body of Zhan Luanhui would have already turned into mincemeat. But these were still significant strains. Zhan Luanhui had been through countless of battles. But there had never been one that left him as pathetic as this. But he just couldn't vent his anger. Because his fury had no target. He had no idea where the enemy was. There had been a few times where he was 100% sure that the enemy was right behind that sword. But when he struck with all his might, it all hit air. And the moment Xian Qi was used for his defenses, he could not accelerate his speed at the same time, ultimately trapping him where he is. Not only was he not able to advance, he was sent back by the opponent's attacks. Zhan Luanhui's clothes were completely torn and tattered, barely covering his body. Everything that should have been covered had already been exposed. But to be fair, the blood of yellow flame enjoyed swinging through a certain place. And that place was a vital part of the human body, so it paid extra attention to that area. But it had to be admitted that Zhan Luanhui was truly impressive for an old demon. That place was extremely difficult for cultivating Xian Qi, but it was solidly protected by that old man. Even the blood of yellow flame could not harm it. The 9 Nether 14th young master. You claim to be the #1 expert in the world. Come up and fight this old man fair and square if you have the balls. What sort of hero are you? Using this sort of shady and despicable methods. Don't tell me that the 9 Nethers only know these despicable methods. Are you not ashamed of bringing the reputation of ancestor first young master down? Zhan Luanhui hollered loudly, his hair in disarray. Had it been any other time, Zhan Luanhui wouldn't be afraid. Both parties would use up strength in a battle. Even though he was using a large amount of Xian Qi to defend himself, the other party may just be using up a large amount of strength to attack. Furthermore, with such a bizarre attacking pattern, it would further drain the body and mind. Zhan Luanhui was confident that no one would be able to last longer than himself. Even though he wasn't afraid of this battle, there were a bunch of pursuers behind that were determined to stake their lives. If he didn't quickly get out of this predicament, it'd really be difficult if he wanted to escape when they caught up. Jun Moxie, who had concealed himself, was feeling so pleased he almost cheered. But he mimicked the 9 Nether 14th young master's voice and let out an eerie scoff. It was really similar. Like a chilling gust of wind that was blown out of the 9 Nethers. Like the sigh of a soul. Then, Jun Moxie said eerily, "Are you even worthy? You cannot even find where this seat is. How are you worthy of fighting me face to face?" If he didn't speak, Zhan Luanhui may not be that angry. But young Master Jun just had to scoff. And this scoff had made Zhan Luanhui more certain of his identity. Thus, Zhan Luanhui was even more furious. He flew into uncontrollable rage. Had he only scoffed, it was still not a big deal. But after he scoffed, he dared to question. Are you even worthy? This sentence drove Zhan Luanhui mad with anger. What sort of status did Zhan Luanhui have? In the entire Xian continent, aside from Miao Qingcheng, who was hidden underground, there was no one else who was more senior than him. Aside from Miao Qingcheng, just in terms of Xian cultivation, Zhan Luanhui truly stood at the top of the whole Xian continent. And since Miao Qingcheng was unable to resurface in this world, Zhan Luanhui was the existence that stood at the peak. The 9 Nether 14th young master may be known as #1 in the world, but he had never entered Zhan Luanhui's eyes. This sort of status and strength. But being told, "Are you even worthy?" in such a condescending manner? Zhan Luanhui roared angrily. So angrily that he almost vomited blood. He let out a furious roar. 10,000 beams of chilling light shot from his sword as he struck back at full force. The battle between them got more intense. But not much time had passed because their speed had already gone beyond the levels of ordinary people. It was just that with this delay, the situation became more unfavorable for Zhan Luanhui. The experts of Heaven's Saint Palace had already caught up. Gu Han caught up heatedly, only to find out that someone had managed to stall Zhan Luanhui here. With his strength alone. He couldn't help but feel shocked and found it unbelievable. What sort of figure was Zhan Luanhui? This was something everyone who had just exchanged blows with him was clear about. Although they were disgusted by Zhan Luanhui's character, they were all convinced by his cultivation. Back when Gu Han and the rest joined forces, they could only defeat him and not kill him. A force of over 30 Saint Emperor experts, 10 Saint Venerables, and 4 Saint Monarchs couldn't even injure him badly. What more? Stop him from escaping. But right now, before their eyes, there was someone, with their strength alone, holding Zhan Luanhui back. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1146. Holy Land Chases. An Animosity of Eternity. And even forcing him into a disadvantage of not being able to fight back. And at the same time he did all this, he did not even reveal himself. What sort of powerful capabilities does this person have? When everyone detected the 9 nether frost blade and heard that furious roar from Zhan Luanhui, a perplexed look filled everyone's eyes. This person was the 9 nether 14th young master. This lunatic. To think that the 9 nether 14th young master was this powerful. But he had no animosity with Zhan Luanhui, so why would he try to stop an expert like Zhan Luanhui? He was doing his enemy a huge favor. Gu Han felt even more confused. But he also knew that now was not the time to consider this. Zhan Luanhui had destroyed the restriction and caused the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to completely collapse. And even triggered the cluster eruption of all the volcanoes. The 10,000 years of 3 holy lands' hard work were all destroyed. And the most terrifying consequence was that there was nothing that inhibited the strange races from invading. Everything was destroyed thanks to Zhan Luanhui's outrageous act. Many people died in the ongoing war between Jun Moxie, but it was not as bad as what Zhan Luanhui had done to them. More than half of the members of the 3 holy lands had all died in this disaster. The entire beautiful palace of the elusive world of immortals turned into a sea of lava. Aside from the 400 men that managed to escape under Mo Wu Dao's lead, no one else managed to survive. It was not any better for the Illusory Blood Sea. They were completely crushed by the Pillar of Heaven's mountains that came crashing down. Under the protection of numerous experts, Huyen Ao managed to make it out alive. But only 500 others made it out along with him. Of which, many of them were heavily injured, and were in a worse state than the elusive world of immortals. All those 10,000 members of the other extended families of these 2 holy lands did not manage to escape. Old, young, men, women, all of them turned into ashes. And there were even more experts who died in this disaster because they were trying to save their own descendants. The Supreme Golden City was located slightly further and was more fortunate, but still sustained smaller losses. There was not too much damage to their forces. More than 2,000 experts managed to escape. Hard work of 10,000 years. Ruined in an instant. 10,000s of experts dying in vain. Even 2 Saint Emperors from the Heaven Saint Palace died in this freak disaster. All their spirit herbs were destroyed. 10,000 years of accumulation going up in smoke. The sacred lotus pond was also destroyed. What sort of disastrous loss was this? They often said that it was good as long as they were alive. But all the objects from the Heaven Saint Palace and 3 Holy Lands were even more priceless than the individuals. And this accident just had to happen a month before the war for seizing the heavens. This was literally announcing the death of the whole Xian continent. All the 10 billion lives of Xian continent were completely left exposed to the bloody butcher knives of the strange races. And the 3 Holy Lands had been weakened by 80% of their strength before this great battle. And that natural protection that obstructed both lands had turned into a pile of rubble. All of this, caused by Zhan Luanhui. This level of enmity was so great that they could not exist under the same sky. It was a bloody vengeance that would never be resolved for eternity. The hearts of everyone from the 3 Holy Lands were dripping with blood. Even if they had to chase him to the Yellow Springs, Gu Han and the rest would not let Zhan Luanhui off. Zhan Kuang. This main cause of disaster. Gu Han waved his hand and all the experts from Heaven Saint Palace instantly formed a circle, surrounding the duo that were battling. Everyone looked at Zhan Luanhui with a crazed hatred in their eyes. But this battle that was happening before them attracted all of their attention. A battle between one person and 3 swords. Or rather to say, one person was wielding his sword to fight against 2 other swords. To be more accurate, against a bunch of swords. Zhan Luanhui danced about in the air, his hair a mess and himself practically Nike'd, yelling loudly as his sword light flashed about like lightning and rain. Behind him, left and right, that sword flew about, occasionally unleashing a rain of swords, attacking Zhan Luanhui in a frenzy. And there was also a black, narrow 9 nether frost blade that appeared out of the void from time to time. And every single strike was aimed at the weakest spot of Zhan Luanhui's defenses. From start to end, they did not see the person wielding it. But these 2 swords were clearly being controlled by someone hidden. And it was someone who was extremely skilled. A miraculous level of sword control technique. Watching that constantly transforming attacks, that excellent control, Gu Han and the rest couldn't help but feel ashamed that they were inferior. And every single strike from that divine sword, every single turn and block was extremely profound. An overbearing attack that no one was able to bear. Including Zhan Luanhui. Even if he was an existence that stood at the peak of this world. Everyone watched the battle unfold silently and anxiously. If not for Zhan Luanhui's shocking level of defense, he would have already been defeated and killed. In a situation like this, if one of his defenses missed, he'd instantly be crushed. But the situation was not favorable. The 9 nether 14th young master that was controlling in the dark was undeniably strong, but he also had its flaws. His skills were not as deep as Zhan Luanhui. He may not be the winner from this battle of endurance. Even though he was in the advantageous position currently. This battle was full of dominance. Both Zhan Luanhui and that sword had an air of condescendence. And their aura already made this clear. Do not intervene. No one must intervene. Anyone who intervened would definitely become the enemy of both parties. And in fact, in a battle like this, there was no room for a third party to intervene. Zhan Luanhui feeling fearful of the joint attack from everyone was still understandable. But why did that divine sword also exude such a hostile aura? Right now, if everyone joined in to get rid of Zhan Luanhui, it would all end well. And there will only be lesser unexpected situations and was the easiest method to resolve it. Dragging the battle out will only give birth to more unexpected situations. But no one dared to recklessly intervene when facing that powerful divine sword. Intervening meant that they were looking down on the owner of the sword. offending this grandmaster. But a certain grandmaster Jun Moxie was so angry his lungs were about to explode. Jun Moxie had never been one who followed the rules of the pugilistic world. As long as it defeated the enemy, that was the best method he acknowledged. So all sorts of unscrupulous methods like poisoning or scheming was no big deal to him. If the blood of Yellow Flame was in his own hands right now, young Master Jun would have yelled, "Everyone! Let's go! Chop this old scoundrel up!" But right now, the blood of Yellow Flame was acting on his own will. Although it was a lot stronger compared to when Jun Moxie was wielding it, this fellow was still extremely prideful and started to talk about some sort of nobleman manners and fighting fairly. And was even excited, as if he had spotted a prey. And was even rejecting the 9-nether frost blade in Jun Moxie's hand. And the most infuriating thing was that this fellow insisted on settling Jun Xie on its own. Scared that he didn't get to devour everything alone. Brother. This is war. What sort of heroic quality are you trying to display? You're the only one present here that is capable of sucking the strength of Xian cultivators. Jun Moxie glared angrily. If he wasn't worried about exposing his identity, he would have yelled out already. He decided. After this battle, I'll definitely teach the blood of Yellow Flame a good lesson. Let him learn it well. Screwing up at a crucial time like this. Insisting to act on your own. Jun Moxie took in a deep breath. Young Master Jun was clear that this was caused by himself. In the records of the Hongjun Pagoda, it was written that the blade is the emperor of weapons. The sword is the lord of weapons. An imposing magnanimity is the sword of a nobleman. The model of grandeur is truly odd. Never taking risks and doing treacherous work. Of all the 10,000 weapons in the world, only the sword can be considered a nobleman. The sword of a nobleman only cares about his pride. Proud and aloof. Looking down at the world. The emperors of swords. When the sword is brandished, it is imposing. Treacherous tricks may work momentarily, but it will not allow you to lord for eternity. Always remember this. It was the meaning behind this discussion of noblemen amongst swords that the blood of Yellow Flame had completely digested and was putting into effect. Which was what led to the blood of Yellow Flame acting selfishly on its own in this battle. Jun Xie let out a loud cry and suddenly soared. Ignoring the daunting attacks from the swords. Rising upwards. The blood of Yellow Flame instantly slashed him 7 times. Blood barely spurted out when the wounds healed on their own. Jun Moxie's 9-nether frost blade also stabbed him thrice in this instance. At his forehead, heart and dantian. But they were only 3 centimeters deep when they were sent flying back out. Then his skin also healed back to before. Jun Xie shot 100 zhang into the skies and roared into the heavens. His black hair exploded about. He stood stationarily in the air, looking at the 2 swords that were charging at him. Very well. 9-nether 14th young master. You have successfully pissed me off this time. For 10,000s of years, there has never been anyone who had left this old man looking this pathetic. You should be proud of this achievement. Even if you die today, it is not in vain of your reputation as the #1 expert in the Xian continent for so many years. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1147. Heaven Mad Battle Dragon. Jun Xie's pitch black hair floated in the air. Like seaweed in the ocean had been tossed into a tempest. His face remained cold and expressionless. But there was a chilling aura oozing from his body. Only a few tattered pieces of cloth hung on his body. He should be looking extremely pathetic. But right now, Zhan Luanhui had an imposing air around him, as if he were a god that had descended upon the mortal realm. And this divine aura filled the air within the blink of an eye. And the entire air was filled by this tyrannical aura. Since you want to push me so far, insist on making an enemy, then this old man shall let you have a taste of what it means for there to be a sky above a sky, a man above a man. Zhan Xiao laughed coldly and suddenly turned. A tornado formed at his foot, like a dragon that came charging out from underground, sucking in everything in its path. As the tornado blew, a bluish aura exploded from Zhan Luanhui's body. And there were 10,000 silhouettes of Zhan Luanhui appearing at the same time. It is the heaven-mad battle dragon. Hurry up and retreat. Gu Han's face changed as he yelled quickly. Heaven-mad battle dragon was the skill that made Zhan Luanhui famous when he was still Zhan Kuang. The might of this attack was incomparable. Zhan Luanhui had used this attack against one of the 9 nether young masters and gained the upper hand. He could allow countless of spatial cracks to appear at wherever he unleashed this attack. The moment one was hit, no matter which spatial crack they fell into, they could never make it back. Even an existence who was stronger than Zhan Luanhui will suffer if he met this attack. Back then, this attack of Zhan Kuang was listed as one of the tabooed arts. And it was also Zhan Kuang's ultimate sure-kill move. The 9 nether 14th young master that was fighting against Zhan Luanhui was undoubtedly the enemy of the 3 Holy Lands. But it was because of his intervention that everyone else from Heaven Saint Palace could surround Zhan Luanhui. The Heaven Saint Palace owed him a huge favor on this. So Gu Han couldn't sit and watch. But the giant hurricane that was formed by Zhan Luanhui suddenly exploded. And countless sparks flew due to the explosion. The impact of it caused countless of spatial cracks that covered the skies, all reeking with the odor of death and destruction. At the same time, the countless silhouettes of Zhan Luanhui began attacking from every single possible direction. And it covered a huge range. The 100 zhang radius of where the blood of yellow flame and 9 nether frost blade appeared. Zhan Luanhui's goal was simple. Anyone within this range will not be able to escape from his wave of attacks. No one will be able to control his sword this nimbly from 100 zhang away. Even Miao Qing Cheng is incapable of this. If someone is really able to do this, then that person is no human, but a god. As long as he was still human, he would never be able to escape this barrage of attacks from Zhan Luanhui. And the moment he found his target, no matter how well hidden he was, he would be the focus of all the attacks. A loud explosion rang out. Countless gusts of qi fired about in a frenzy. Even Gu Han and the rest who had formed a circle were sent flying and scattered by this powerful blast. And those 2 swords had completely vanished at that moment. Zhan Xiao continued to stand in the central position, sending his spirit senses out to scan the surroundings. He couldn't help but let out a smirk. A satisfied grin of someone who had complete victory. The attack this time had accomplished its expected goal. Although it was not enough to completely annihilate the 9 nether 14th young master, it had temporarily stopped those 2 bizarre swords. It had also broken the net that Heaven Saint Palace had formed, so there were even greater hopes of his own escape. As long as he escaped, nothing was a problem. The tornado that had formed due to the mad heaven battle dragon continued to shred away at the air before slowly returning into a small, faint grayish twister beside Zhan Luanhui. But Zhan Luanhui's body remained clear and distinct as he stood in the void. He looked endlessly pathetic without any clothing covering his body, but there was endless dominance and arrogance exuding from him. His eyes scanned Gu Han and the rest emotionlessly. He didn't say a single word. It was only now that all those pitch-black spatial cracks caused by the heaven-mad battle dragon slowly began to close, returning back to how it was. This heaven-mad battle dragon had completely blocked the entire world earlier. It was truly one of the legendary, godly skills. Gu Han and the rest from Heaven's Saint Palace had a discouraged look on their faces. They had all heard of how impressive the legendary Zhan Kuang was, but they had never expected him to be this powerful. Zhan Luan Hui's strength was already enough to shock the entire world and its history. If Zhan Kuang had used this heaven-mad battle dragon against them, everyone would definitely fall into the cracks of space, with a maximum of only 2 or 3 who would manage to escape. Otherwise, it was more likely for all of them to be completely wiped out. And that apathetic look Zhan Luan Hui had shot them earlier, even though he did not say a single word. The warning behind it was clear. With all their strength combined, they couldn't do anything to this great enemy. Zhan Luan Hui clearly had enough energy to unleash the heaven-mad battle dragon again. Even the 9 14th young master that had managed to suppress Zhan Luan Hui on his own was completely gone now. Those 2 dazzling swords too. Against such a great enemy, how could they fight against him? Even if they intended to fight to their deaths, it was useless. From far away, the volcanoes continued to erupt. The terrifying consequences caused by Zhan Luan Hui was still ongoing. But everyone felt completely powerless when facing Zhan Luan Hui. Zhan Luan Hui cackled coldly and continued to advance slowly, with his hands behind his back. Gu Han's body jerked, a burning look in his eyes. That was a look of determination. To fight till his death. That cold laughter of Zhan Luan Hui had sent all his blood boiling. Kill. Even if we have to perish with this demon, we must not let him off like this. Gu Han roared hysterically, raising his fist. Kill. A loud cry rang out. 50 top experts went charging at Zhan Luan Hui. Zhan Luan Hui continued to laugh coldly. He spread both his hands, and a pitch-black ball of light began to form in his palms. He threw his head back and exclaimed with a sinister look in his eyes. Since the 3 holy lands insists on digging your own graves, then I shall fulfill your wishes. Since all your descendants have also perished in this disaster, I shall send you all to be reunited with them. Ha ha ha. He was just about to strike, when something unexpected happened again. There was a flash of sword light. It was that dazzling sword from earlier. This sword flew out with no intentions of turning back. With a stunning grandeur and great determination, it stabbed Zhan Luan Hui's chest with the force of a lightning bolt. And at the same time, scattering that ball of light on his palms. Zhan Luan Hui let out a loud roar. But this sword did not stop, continuing to push forward with tremendous force. In this moment, Zhan Luan Hui had gathered all his Xian Qi in his chest. That sword was only 3-inch deep when it met with resistance from the Xian Qi, unable to go deeper into the body. But Zhan Luan Hui's body was also unable to endure this overwhelming force. His body arched as his entire back protruded out. His head and feet were touching. He stumbled backwards rapidly under the impact of this tyrannical sword. In the air, the sword continued to push his body backwards at high speed. Both the sword and Zhan Luan Hui's body were shooting out bright beams of light. Ha! One of the experts from Heaven's Saint Palace behind Zhan Luan Hui turned into shreds in the air with this explosion. His sword also turned into metal shavings that scattered in the sky. A situation where he had no strength to withstand but turned into a weapon that he could use to kill his enemies. Zhan Luanhui's skills had really reached an incomprehensible level. Zhan Luanhui let out a roar that shakes the heavens. He wanted to stop his body that was sent backwards at high speed, but he was midair and could only prevent his body from being pierced through by this demon-like sword. He couldn't withstand the overwhelming force from the opponent. A glint appeared in Gu Han's eye. Not minding that one of his comrades had died a tragic death, he brought up his sword and stabbed it into Zhan Luanhui's chest with a loud holler. He wasn't hoping to kill the enemy, but he was hoping to push him back. At this moment, Gu Han already understood what this 14th young master intended to do. With Zhan Luanhui's profound skills, he was already at a level where he could not be killed by force. There must be some other way to kill him. And currently, if they wanted Zhan Luanhui to die, the only way was to push this scumbag into the volcano. The volcano erupted because of you, Zhan Luanhui. Then let you, Zhan Luanhui, be sent to your death by the volcano. Zhan Luanhui was first pushed by two tremendous forces as he drew closer to the mouth of the volcano. He did not have a free hand to strike back. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1148. Burning the demon in the volcano. The two swords stuck in his chest were like two rockets, pushing Zhan Luanhui back with great force. He flew backwards rapidly, like a bolt of lightning, like a falling meteor. And he was pushed closer and closer to the mouth of the volcano. Gu Han used all his strength, channeling all of his Xian Qi onto his sword to accelerate the force. The edges of his robes were beginning to smoke, but he still had a determined look in his eyes. His hatred was evident. Even if he had to die with this wretched existence that brought harm to the world, Gu Han had no regrets. Zhan Luanhui could distinctly feel that smoldering heat drawing closer to this back. He let out a furious roar. He was infuriated, but there was nothing he could do about it. Jun Moxie gritted his teeth, his hands on the blood of yellow flame, pushing forward with tremendous force. This bastardly old thing had already eaten almost 1,000 hits from Jun Moxie. But Jun Moxie was not strong enough. He couldn't kill him. Right now, this was the only way to kill him. In the Hongjun Pagoda, Mei Shuayan repeatedly ran to build up momentum before sending herself flying forward, knocking against Jun Moxie's back with all her might. By doing this repeatedly, with every impact, Jun Moxie would be able to accelerate the pushing. Whoosh! There was a sharp whistle as a Saint Venerable from Heaven's Saint Palace sent himself flying forward like a cannonball, hammering heavily against Gu Han's back, sending Gu Han forward more rapidly. What they were doing were similar to what Mei Shuayan was doing, but there was an essential difference. Mei Shuayan was the only person in this world who understood Jun Moxie's cultivation the best. She had already calculated how much strength she should use when using the impact of her knocking to aid Jun Moxie, so as to not bring too much strain to him. And young Master Jun had undergone the transformations by the Hongjun Pagoda. His body was strong and well-versed in various ways of fighting, so he didn't suffer any injuries even though he was repeatedly knocked against. But it was different for Gu Han. Gu Han had channeled all of his strength onto his sword. His Xian Qi protection was at its lowest. And that expert from Heaven's Saint Palace behind had came cannon balling at full force. Even though it had increased the force tremendously, it also resulted in Gu Han sustaining more injuries. The burden on his body was growing. But Gu Han spat out a mouthful of bloody, gritted his teeth and yelled, "Again!" Gu Han hated Zhan Luanhui to the core. This fiend had to be eradicated, be it for the world or for himself. He had already made up his mind to perish together. Even though his injuries were worsening, he did not consider his own safety and asked for more force. With the repeated impacts, Zhan Luanhui was only 200 zhang away from the nearest volcano. A distance like this was essentially the central position of an erupting volcano. Gu Han's clothes have already turned into ashes. His hair also began to curl and smoke, before completely turning into ashes. Zhan Luanhui let out a crazed roar, blood spurting out of his mouth. He had clearly used some sort of self-harming secret technique to constantly increase his strength, resisting with great might, hoping to break free of his predicament. Under his powerful resistance, they drew closer and closer to the mouth of the volcano. But they were slowing down. If it continued like this, there was a chance that Zhan Luanhui might be able to escape right before they entered the volcano. It may be 1,000 degrees there, but with Zhan Luanhui's deep cultivation, he will still be able to escape. They're getting closer now. An anxious look appeared on Jun Moxie's face. A look of anger and grief was on Gu Han's face. The both of them, and Mei Shuayan, who was in the Hongjun Pagoda, were already using their full power. Right now, they had already entered a restricted zone. Those behind could not aid them anymore. If they want to forcefully help, they would only be throwing their life away. Because this was too near to the mouth of the volcano already. Recklessly intervening was not helping. They'd only be throwing their life away. 10 zhang left. There were only 10 zhang left. The scorching magma was right before their eyes. It was still shooting up towards the skies angrily. There were already countless of burning red rocks that were flying about, and landing continuously on Gu Han and Zhan Luanhui's bodies. The skin on Gu Han's body was already wrinkling, and smoke was appearing from them. But Zhan Luanhui had completely came to a halt. He slowly raised his head, the corners of his lips curled, into a sinister grin. Even though smoke was coming out from his back, his entire body was practically blistering from the boiling hot lava. But he had finally stopped himself from moving back. There were only 10 zhang left. Had it been any other time, a sky xian, or even an earth xian could easily overcome it. But right now, it had become a distance that was impossible to get past. Behind, the experts from Heaven's Saint Palace who had been chasing after them also noticed this. Instantly, someone leapt out. Everyone was raging. Just like Gu Han, they wanted Zhan Luanhui to die. For this goal, they were willing to pay whatever price was needed, including their own life. One person hollered, "Everyone! Stop fighting! All of you stop! Let me do it!" He didn't wait for a response. He leapt into the air, stretching his legs out. "Hurry!" he yelled. A look of anguish appeared on everyone's faces as tears streamed down their faces. But now was not the time to be emotional. All of them present had lived for thousands of years. How could they not be aware that this was a critical moment? Any small delay, it could just be in the blink of an eye and the entire situation might just change. With no time to grieve, everyone let out a furious roar with tears in their eyes. They channeled all their strength and releasing it at the same time, all striking at the feet of this person. At the same time, this Saint Venerable kicked his foot backwards with great force. Borrowing the combined strength of everyone, with colossal energy, he ricocheted like a cannonball. Because of the heat of this place, and the friction between him moving at high speed in the air, his entire body began to burn, turning him into a fireball. At that moment where Zhan Hui's sinister grin barely had the time to change to a look of shock. That person's body, with strong wind and flames, and already smashed against his with a loud bang. This Saint Venerable gathered all his strength to lock his grip on Zhan Hui, clinging onto his body. With a bang, this tremendous impact brought these two through that last 10 zhang and straight into the boiling lava. Along with Zhan Hui's cry of objection. Fourth brother ah. Gu Han let out a cry, feeling as if his heart was being cut up. And both Jun Moxie and Gu Han were still releasing their greatest strength. With the disappearance of Zhan Hui, both of them had suddenly lost the opposing force from the front, and couldn't help but fall forward towards the smoking mouth of the volcano. From the looks of it, they were about to perish along with him. Gu Han closed his eyes, a content smile on his face. Dying like this, even though there were still some regrets, it was good enough. Behind, everyone let out cries of shock. Before the blinding heat from the volcano, there was a flash and Gu Han vanished from sight. The entire world turned silent. Everyone's hearts were filled with anguish and agony. Zhan Hui may have died, but they had also lost Gu Han, and that 14th young master, who never showed himself, also seemed to have died here. Suddenly, there was a pained howl. A human figure, covered with red, scorching lava flying out from the volcano at high speed. With a pained screech, it flipped and rolled down from the other side of the volcano. And vanished. Zhan Hui. He had clearly fallen into the volcano just now. Right now, he still had the strength to leap out. Zhan Hui, at the moment of life and death, sacrificed burning his soul to release the seal that he had placed on himself 1,000 years ago. Within seconds, he returned back to the peak of his cultivation, and finally escaped from the volcano. But his physical body was already destroyed. Zhan Kuang's reincarnated soul did not get destroyed, but Zhan Hui's body could no longer be used. Zhan Hui had sealed his soul in fear that his current body was unable to bear the might and power of his soul and explode. But now, he no longer had a choice. If he didn't break the seal, he'll die. So he chose to release the seal, releasing the original spirit that belonged to Zhan Kuang, and managed to escape from this treacherous volcano. Even then, Zhan Hui had sustained great losses in this battle. Not only did his physical body get destroyed, his spirit was half destroyed. Whether he really managed to survive remained to be seen. In the moment everyone was shocked. They saw another figure flying from the volcano towards themselves. When it came closer, to their joy, they realized it was Gu Han. Not only did the doomed Gu Han not die, there was not much damage to his body. Because Jun Moxie did not reveal himself, the high temperature of the volcano did not have much effect on him. So at the last moment, young Master Jun grabbed Gu Han and threw him into the Hongjun Pagoda. The young Master Jun still had some sentiment for Gu Han. Gu Han had already acknowledged his fate, and closed his eyes to await his death. He had already fulfilled his wish, and he did not have too many regrets. But at the moment the blazing temperature was about to hit him, all of the heat disappeared, as if he had entered a fascinating place. He couldn't help but feel shocked. He was about to open his eyes, but he was already tossed out. When he finally opened his eyes again, he realized that he was surrounded by everyone from Heaven's Saint Palace and a distance away from the volcano. He narrowly escaped death. In fact, at the moment Zhan Hui appeared from the volcano, Jun Moxie already went flying after him. This battle against Zhan Hui had given Jun Moxie too many warnings. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1149. The demon dwindles. The evil monarch appears. To think that there was really an expert who could not be killed in this world. With the invincible sharpness of the blood of yellow flame after all that refining, it was still unable to shred the protection on his body. And this body was a body that Jun Xie had taken over. And not his original body. Then, if he truly returns to his peak form, how terrifying will he become? This time, they had managed to achieve this outcome simply because he was intercepted by Jun Moxie while being anxious about fleeing. And they ultimately obtained victory with the full support from everyone from Heaven Saint Palace, staking their lives and everything. And the selfless attacks by Gu Han and the rest. And the full support of Mei Shuiyan in the Hongjun Pagoda. And someone like Jun Xie, for the sake of making the Zhan family monopolize misty illusory manner, was willing to subject the common lives of Xian continent to chaos. Someone this ambitious was undoubtedly a huge disaster if he continued to be allowed to live in this world. If this person really intended to make the evil monarch manor an enemy, aside from Jun Moxie himself, no one else in the enormous evil monarch manor would be able to escape from his pursuit. Even the magma of the volcano was not enough to kill him. To be able to come leaping out again. That was fucking terrifying. And right now, the evil monarch manor had already thoroughly offended the Zhan family. Jun Xie. This indomitable existence undoubtedly became a significant factor that determined the outcome of these two families. After witnessing Jun Xie's frightening prowess, Jun Moxie was sure of one thing. If Jun Xie is not dead, he will never be able to rest or eat in peace. Right now, he had sustained severe injuries, and his soul was about to perish. This was a golden opportunity bestowed by heaven. Take his life while he is weak. He flew over the mouth of the volcano with a whoosh, rushing over to where Jun Xie had fallen earlier. It was a sea of magma below. It was the central region of 6 erupted volcanoes. This was originally a basin, but right now, it was completely filled with magma. Jun Moxie searched around the volcanoes for a long time before finally finding Jun Xie's corpse in one of them. This sudden calamity had already killed 10,000s of people. It was naturally difficult to determine how many corpses had been submerged by magma. But how was it possible to determine that this corpse belonged to Jun Xie? It was simple. In this giant sea of magma, the only skeleton that remained was this one. Only a psycho like Jun Xie, a 10,000-year-old monster, would have a body that was able to withstand the destruction by the magma even after his spirit left the skeleton. At least, until Jun Moxie found it. When Jun Moxie found it, he risked no delays and stabbed the blood of yellow flame into this skeleton, which was filled with lava on the inside. The blood of yellow flame let out a disappointed whine, flying up listlessly. Jun Moxie sighed. There was no mistaking the body, but the spirit had already fled. This corpse was just an empty shell. Even if it was tossed away, aside from rotting away, it had no use at all. Jun Xie. No, Jun Xie's spirit had already fled a long time ago. With this escape, he would definitely be even harder to find. Who knew which person's body the old demon would force his soul into? After a saint emperor died, there was a chance of a spirit seed appearing. For a saint venerable, their state of mind would become a holy infant. These two forms were unable to directly take over another person's body. They could only choose to possess the body of a newborn infant. But Jun Xie was a powerful spirit that had already surpassed all the experts of this world. He had already gone past those 2 levels of cultivation, so he could go straight into taking over someone's body. And this soul could retain extraordinary strength. It wouldn't be long when his strength grew exponentially. If the body he took over was fairly good, he even had the chance to make a comeback and rise back to stand at the peak. Jun Moxie let out a long sigh. Such a golden opportunity, with such an advantageous situation, but he was still unable to completely eradicate this frightening opponent. It was truly regrettable. But since things had already come to this, there was nothing that can be done about it. It had already vanished in that endless sea of lava. The surviving experts from the 3 holy lands exchanged looks. All of them had a look of surprise and worry on their faces. The delightable thing was, Zhan Xie, this seemingly invincible, undefeatable opponent, died just like this. Their worry was, the 3 holy lands had been completely wiped out, so how would they deal with the war for seizing the heavens? There was also not much meaning in the war for seizing the heavens anymore. Because the pillar of heaven's mountains had already collapsed. The natural barrier was already gone. The strange races could enter the Xian continent freely. With the strange race's personality, could they really hope that they would keep to their promise and partake in the war for seizing the heavens? Were they all going to become the greatest sinners in history? After rejoicing in their victory, they all looked blankly at the volcanoes that were spewing lava endlessly. All their thoughts were in a whirl. Just at this moment, a figure flashed before them. A youth donned in white appeared before all of them. Chu Wuhui narrowed his eyes. Jun Moxie. Everyone also instantly recognized his brazen youth who had fought with them back in Mount Heaven Saint. Everyone sure has great memory. Jun Moxie blatantly praised. Then his face turned serious. Can someone tell me, what happened here? Why did the pillar of heaven's mountains become like this? Then he pointed to the surrounding volcanoes. Isn't it all because of that cursed, bastardly thing Zhan Xie? Cheng Yin Xiao sighed. Then he rolled his eyes and said, You really came at such a coincidental timing. We just finished battling Zhan Xie. Then you popped out. Have you been watching from the sides? Was the battle exciting? Everyone's faces turned dark upon hearing what Cheng Yin Xiao said. Everyone was clear of how treacherous the battle earlier was. Jun Moxie had appeared at such a coincidental timing. There is no way it was by chance. The battle earlier was earth-shaking. Even if Jun Moxie really was rushing on his way, the moment he detected that shocking prowess, he will definitely hurry to reach and understand the situation. There is no way he will come late. Could it be that this lad was sitting on the side and watching us fight it out? Hoping that both sides will sustain severe injuries so he can reap the benefits? Jun Moxie clicked his tongue and said coldly, Watch from the sides. Exciting? This seat originally wanted to watch from the sides. But this show you've put up was not exciting at all. So I could only go up the stage myself. If not for this seat's exciting performance, Zhan Xie would have escaped. And all of you would have already died in that volcano. Jun Moxie let out a cold chuckle and with a flip of his wrist, a dazzling longsword covered in cold flames appeared in his hand. The moment this sword appeared, there was an arrogant aura in the air. As if in the face of this sword, all the experts of the world were mere insects. It's that divine flying sword that had attacked Zhan Xie earlier. That divine sword that with its strength alone stopped Zhan Xie and forced him into the volcano. Then, with a twirl of his left hand, a chilling black blade appeared in his hands. It blinked its eyes eerily, like a soul was sighing. It was a 9-nether frost blade. Could it be that the one who had fought with Zhan Xie was not the 9-nether 14th young master? But you, Jun Moxie? Everyone cried in shock. A look of disbelief on their faces. So he was the most crucial person in killing Zhan Luanhui, the main fighting force in this battle. And they were the ones who did not do much. But now, they want to malign the person who had contributed the most of watching from the sidelines. This was not a small misunderstanding. Instantly, all the experts felt ashamed. They were not Imo Wu Dao. Their skin were not that thick. Forget it. Let's not brood on these insignificant matters. Let's go down and talk. Jun Moxie said indifferently. After chasing for so long, everyone, despite their prowess, couldn't help but feel a little exhausted. Especially the strain on their minds. And most importantly, this place was indeed not a suitable place to talk. Under Jun Moxie's suggestion, everyone moved out of the region of the erupting volcanoes. Although it was still hot, it was not a burden to them with their powers. These remaining experts left of Heaven's Saint Palace had an extremely uncomfortable look on their faces. They looked at each other. But not a single one of them knew how to start. After a sigh, a half-dead Gu Han stood up with great difficulty. He breathed heavily and cried. Manor Lord Jun, you have seen the current situation. I shall skip all the pleasantries about gratitude. I'll only briefly share about what Manor Lord Jun is interested about. Jun Moxie nodded his head. But there was another flash and Mei Shuayan appeared before everyone. Everyone was caught by surprise again. They couldn't figure out how the evil monarch managed to fight while remaining hidden, how he revealed himself. And right now, they were looking at the Lord of Tian Fa, Mei Shuayan, appearing in such a bizarre manner. But all of them knew that now was not the time to be surprised. They could only force it down. But the gloominess in their eyes was still obvious. Mei Shuayan had been hidden in the Hongjun Pagoda the entire time. She did have an understanding of what was happening outside, but it was still not accurate. Seeing the pathetic and terrible state everyone was in, despite preparing herself mentally for it, she was still shocked. But she suppressed it after seeing the hinting look Jun Moxie gave her. Behind everyone, Xiaoying stood silently. Her eyes were lifeless and her face was pale. Her eyes only brightened and regained a bit of color a little when she first saw Jun Moxie earlier, but it faded away shortly after. For 1,000 years, Xiaoying had been taking care of all the spirit herbs and seedlings of the Heaven Saint Palace, including the exquisite lotus. These priceless plants were what Xiaoying's mind was on, but right now, they were all destroyed. It was the equivalent of Xiaoying's efforts of 1,000 years being destroyed in a single day. Right now, there was only an endless feeling of loss in Xiaoying's heart. With no place to settle. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1150. 9 Illusory Quicksand. Noticing that everyone sat down, she subconsciously followed suit, but her eyes were hollow, as if there was no life in them anymore. Gu Han took in a deep breath. Colorful light circulated around his body. His xian qi changed in colors from black, then red, green. After changing numerous times, he spat out a dark, black blood clot. Then, his festered flesh and charred skin began to slowly fall off from his body. After the scabs fell off, a new layer of white flesh was revealed. Had it been any ordinary person, with such a severe injury, he would have probably died numerous times over. But Gu Han managed to completely recover in such a short period of time. At least, on the surface. His injuries were no longer an issue, but his appearance. Gu Han had coordinated with Jun Moxie to force Zhan Hui into the volcano earlier. He used all his cultivation on the pushing force, lowering his defenses to the lowest. All his clothes were burnt away. Even his hair and brows were damaged. It wasn't an issue when he was in a completely sorry state earlier, completely pitch black from head to toe. But right now, his body had recovered. His new milky, tender flesh looks pretty good. But he was completely exposed, making it a little. Young Master Jun sniggered internally. When he first met this old man, he had an air of carefreeness and gracefulness, the endless splendor of an otherworldly expert. Right now, he was so sorry looking. But Jun Moxie's first thought was to retrieve a robe and hand it over. Gu Han took it subconsciously, but realization struck him and he couldn't help but turn bright red, putting those robes on in a fluster. His injuries have recovered, but his appearance was extremely unbecoming. He wasn't that different from how Zhan Hui looked earlier. Although there was an urgent matter they had to see to. And a man of character did not bother about trifles. But there were women present here. It was not like the rest from Heaven's Saint Palace did not think of this. But they weren't like young Master Jun who carried a world everywhere he went to produce clothing anytime. If they wished to offer clothes, they'd have to give the ones on their bodies, which was already torn and tattered. Zhan family. The culprit that had caused this disaster is Zhan Kuang. Gu Han scoffed and said through gritted teeth. Zhan family is the ancestor of the Zhan family of the misty illusory manor. And at the same time, one of the 8 disciples of the first manor lord of the misty illusory manor, Miao Qing Cheng. The only one that remains. Jun Moxie nodded his head. What is the cause? Gu Han scoffed as his face contorted. Everything started from greed. For 10,000 years, since the misty illusory manor was established, it had an inseparable relationship with the 3 holy lands. When Ancestor First Young Master sealed the pillar of heaven's mountains that separated the continent into 2, for the sake of ensuring the seal lasts for eternity, he set up a 9 illusory quicksand nirvana formation in the ancestral shrine of the 3 holy lands, using it to absorb the heaven-earth spiritual chi and transforming it into the 9 illusory quicksand. Then the 9 illusory quicksand ensured the continuity of the formation, constantly producing the energy needed to keep the seal on the pillar of heaven's mountains and thus ensuring that the strange races will never step foot in the Xian continent easily for the rest of their lives. The 9 illusory quicksand. Nirvana formation. Jun Moxie mumbled. So that's the reason. And the reason why the misty illusory manor can be formed is because of the 9 illusory divine pearl that the 9 nether first young master left behind. That is also a complex heaven and earth formation that is able to move heaven and earth, sun and moon into a small space, which led to the formation of the misty illusory manor. But if the misty illusory manor wishes to continue existing, every 1,000 years they will have to enter the formation to top up a certain amount of 9 illusory quicksand. The moment this is broken, it means that the entire realm of misty illusory manor will crumble. Gu Han let out a deep sigh. And the disaster today had started from this matter. Jun Moxie came to a complete realization. If the formation in misty illusory manor is not provided with the 9 illusory quicksand, the rainbow holy tree, which is the source of life in misty illusory manor, will wither and die in the shortest time. If the rainbow holy tree dies, the entire misty illusory manor, along with all the lives in it, will all turn into dust. Back then, the 9 nether first young master had his qualms that the 3 holy lands would intentionally wipe out the misty illusory manor. Although the 9 illusory quicksand nirvana formation, being the seal of the pillar of heaven's mountains, is set in the boundaries of the holy land, This formation needs to be maintained and operated, and it can only be done by someone from the misty illusory manor. He raised his head to look at Jun Moxie, knowing that he was confused. The 9 Nether First Young Master had once imparted a set of Xian skills, but later, it was improvised and ultimately imparted to the 4 great disciples. But the effects of their Xian skills were all different. Of which, Senior Miao Qing Chang's line of descendants received the skills that can truly drive the 9 illusory quicksand nirvana formation. And only those with cultivation of a saint venerable and above can do it. Jun Moxie nodded his head. This was the best plan for mutual cooperation and coexistence. And aside from its effect as the seal of the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, this 9 illusory quicksand nirvana formation also has immense power. Those who are a saint venerable and below have completely no way to enter it. Even if a saint venerable enters it, all their strength will vanish the moment they enter it. No matter how powerful they were, they become the equivalent of an ordinary folk. With the strength of an ordinary person, the amount of 9 illusory quicksand that they can bring out is just sufficient for 1,000 years. Perhaps a little more, but it won't be significant. Jun Moxie took in a deep breath. He suddenly developed a genuine admiration for the 9 Nether First Young Master. This brazen, #1 lunatic in all of history, had been so intricate in his considerations for his disciples. This setup was undoubtedly almost perfect. It suppressed the 3 Holy Lands from developing wicked intentions of becoming the only power and also cut off misty illusory manor's possibilities of doing the same. And forced them to last and coexist harmoniously for eternity. No wonder the 3 Holy Lands could last for 10,000 years, so everything. The real reason is because of this 9 illusory quicksand nirvana formation. Every 1,000 years, misty illusory manor will come forth to collect and maintain the circulation of the nirvana formation. This has never changed for the past 10,000 years, and there had never been any accident. And the 3 Holy Lands also built rapport with misty illusory manor for this relationship concerning our existence. Every time the misty illusory manor comes, they will bring 2 bunches of the 7-colored holy fruit. And the Holy Land will gift them with 2 exquisite lotus. Call it exchange, or returning politeness for politeness. 10,000 years passed like this, peacefully. Guhan said solemnly. Numerous days ago, that Zhan Hui, which is the reincarnation of Zhan Kuang, suddenly came to Mount Heaven Saint and requested for an audience with me. Saying that the war for seizing the heavens was impending, he was afraid that it would disturb the Holy Land's preparation for the war for seizing the heavens, and specially came to maintain the formation, and at the same time, retrieve the 9 illusory quicksand for this 1,000 of years. Jun Moxie raised a brow, a questioning look on his face. Guhan chuckled bitterly. You don't need to ask. It was indeed not 1,000 years yet. It was indeed sudden for Zhan Hui's arrival. But since the Pillar of Heaven's mountains collapsed once, 8,000 years ago, it left a huge impact on the 9 illusory quicksand nirvana formation. In recent times, the seal of Pillar of Heaven's mountains occasionally showed signs of loosening. The war for seizing the heavens is just around the corner, and 3 Holy Lands is indeed weak. We do not have the confidence of complete victory. It is also possible that we are completely wiped out in this battle. Zhan Hui, coming from maintenance, also got used thinking that even if we all die in the battle this time, this 9 illusory quicksand nirvana formation will still be able to continue to work. And at least, it can last for 1,000 years. The strange races can still invade the Xian continent, but only those who are extremely strong will be able to come in. At the same time, we believe that the misty illusory manor would not sit and watch their own source of life being left in the hands of others. For a long time, Even if the three holy lands waned, misty Illusory Manor would also come and defend this place of their own accord. So after all of us discussed it, we agreed to Zhan Luanhui's request. At that time, we all did not know that he was the Zhan Kuang from back then. Although he also revealed his strength of a 4th-level Saint Venerable, we did not pay mind to it. Gu Han let out a bleak chuckle. We may not be extremely powerful, but we are confident of dealing with a 4th-level Saint Venerable. Even if he intended to play tricks, we will be able to stop him in time. But who knew? Gu Han's face began to turn red and he coughed violently, a look of hatred on his face. Who knew? This Zhan Luanhui he is the ancestor of the Zhan family in Misty Illusory Manor. Zhan Kuang. Zhan Kuang is completely insane, taking advantage of his cultivation that had long surpassed a Saint Venerable, Saint Monarch, and almost reaching the realm of a sage. The 9 Illusory Quicksand Nirvana formation had almost no effect on him, so he forcibly retrieved large amounts of the 9 Illusory Quicksand from the formation. All the accumulation from 10,000 years. He took off with all of it, not leaving a single bit of it. As he spoke, everyone from Heaven's Saint Palace clenched their fists tightly, a look of anger and frustration on their faces. The 9 Illusory Quicksand that Zhan Kuang took can supply the Misty Illusory Manor for 1,000,000 years. Zhan Kuang is truly the best disciple of Miao Qingcheng. As expected, he plans far ahead. This move truly gets it done once and for all. But when he took all of the 9 Illusory Quicksand, the Nirvana formation can no longer work. There is no way we can gather enough 9 Illusory Quicksand to keep the 9 Illusory Quicksand Nirvana formation going within a couple of days. Gu Han laughed bitterly. Without the 9 Illusory Quicksand, then can it still be called 9 Illusory Quicksand Nirvana formation? At the same time Zhan Kuang came out, the pillar of Heaven's mountains suddenly began to sway. I knew something was wrong and immediately questioned Zhan Kuang. What exactly did you do in there? Gu Han's face twitched. Zhan Kuang tried to give the explanation that after the maintenance of the formation this time, the seal of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains will be even more secure after this round of quaking. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. This Zhan Kuang is really not bad. To be able to be this shameless. It's really a realm of its own already. This story will be continued to chapter 1151. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.